The purpose of this video is to show you the basics of using graphics and images on your website. This is my basic layout for the page. What I would suggest that you do is get in the habit of keeping a template file just so you have this, but all of your web pages are going to have the same layout. So we have our head, we have our body, we have the header, we have the navigation area, which is where we have our links, we have our div, which is where we're actually going to put our content, and then the last thing in here is our footer. So I'm going to get in the habit of making my div here say something like ID equals content, just so that I know that this is the content div. Okay, so within my content div, what I want to do is I want to display some graphics on the page. Alright, so this is the folder where I actually have all of my HTML documents stored. And if you notice, I created a new folder called images. Now my images folder is where I'm going to store all of my graphics. So I have some smiley faces and things that are in here that we'll be using today. Alright, so I'm going to start with adding the smiley.jpg file. I have a smiley.png, and the other common type of graphic is a GIF file. Notice it's pronounced GIF like the peanut butter. It actually is pronounced that way. So anyhow, what I want to do is I want to add this graphic to the page. So to do this, I'm going to use the image tag, and my image tag is going to have a source, which is where is the file located. Now, because I created this under a folder, I have to actually list the name of the folder, / and that's the one on the key with the question mark. Make sure it's a / and then the name of the file. So it's smiley.jpg. Okay, some other attributes that I want to add for an image tag are going to be things like an alt tag. And the alt tag is going to be what text will be displayed if the graphic doesn't show up. And this is used for web browsers where we don't know, it's going to be used for web browsers where the user may have their graphics turned off, because you can do that. It'll also be used for people that can't see, that may have a screen reader program and will actually read to them all of the tags that are for the graphics. So this is going to be an image of a smiley face. Okay, and then some other things that I want to do are, what are the height and width of my graphic? Okay, so if I look at my graphic, it is 350 pixels wide and 370 pixels tall. So I'm going to say my width is equal to 350 and the height is equal to 370. Okay, and then this is a self-closing tag, so I'm going to put a / and then my closing bracket. Alright, so now if I go over here to my browser, I will see that it shows up. Alright, I don't really want it to be this big, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. We're going to make it about 150 by 150. Actually, let's go 100 by 120 just to make it even smaller. Okay, so what I want to show you is if I save this and refresh over here, it will shrink the smiley face down to that size. Now, a word of caution, you don't want to take a picture that you took right off of your phone or camera that is 5 to 8 megabytes in size and then shrink it down by using the width and height tag. It's not shrinking the real picture, it is just strictly decreasing the size of how it displays on the page, which means that if I have a website that has 4 or 5 pictures on it and I just took them with my phone and I resize them using the HTML tag, it's going to take forever to download those pictures. If it's something where I really want the end user to download the original, then I can go ahead and just use the HTML width and height tags to resize it. But if it's something where I'm just putting a graphic on the site, I should always make the graphic itself smaller. Alright, so I have this graphic, and I want to make this graphic where if I click on it, it will go to google.com. Well, last week, what we did to make a tag, or a link, is we used the a tag. So ahref equals, and then where do we want to go? It has to be fully qualified, so http://www.google.com. Okay, and we did something like Google. Alright, so this is how we did our tag last week. Well, what I want to do is, instead of using text here, I want the graphic to be the link. So I'm going to delete my Google and instead put my image tag here. So you notice the A tag goes on the outside, the closing goes on the outside, and the image tag goes inside. Alright, so now if I refresh the page, now it is a link, and if I click on it, I will go to Google. Now the thing is some of our older browsers would automatically put a blue border around this, And to fix that, I'm going to have you use two tags. Okay, the first one is deprecated, which means it really shouldn't be used anymore, but if somebody has this old of a browser that it still shows the blue box, we want to set it in the tag. So inside of the tag, I'm going to say borders equal to 0. And what that does is makes it where there will not be that blue border around the graphic if it's a link. Now the proper way to do it, though, is going to be to use our style tags. Okay, so what I want to do is for my images, I'm going to set the border equal to 0. So now anywhere that there's an image, they will automatically not have a border. Now, like I said, the reason that I did it in the tag here is just strictly for the benefit of old web browsers so that they don't display it wrong. This is not the proper way to do it, though. I'm just doing it as a hack to prevent old browsers from displaying it incorrectly. Alright, so now if I save this and refresh over here, it looks the same, but what it actually just did is the older browsers will not show that blue border around it. Alright, the next thing that I want to do is I want to create another unordered list in the body of my document here. So I'm going to have an unordered list that has some list items. So item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. Okay, so these are just a standard list. I save it and refresh, and there's my list. Okay, now I have these things over here that are called disks. Now we call them a bullet point, but these are a disk because they're solid. And we can have an outline disk and a solid disk, and we can have squares, and we can have a couple of other things that are actually in there. But I don't necessarily want to use the disk. I want to have my own graphic. So to use a graphic instead of these, what I need to know is I have an item which is a bullet.png, and I want that to be the bullet for these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a style for the unordered list itself. So I'm going to say style is equal to something. Okay, and what I want to play with is what's called a list style image. Okay, and where is this? Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm telling it to use a graphic. Well, whenever I use a graphic, I have to tell it to use the URL to that graphic. So it will look like this. And then whatever's in the parentheses is the actual URL to get to it. Well, it's under images, and it's called bullet.png. Okay, so now when I come over to my web page and refresh, now I have little bullets over here. Alright, so I've added a graphic. I've added graphics to my bullets. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a background color to my web page. So I'm going to modify the body, and I'm going to add a background color, and I'm going to make it green. And I want you to see what happens if I refresh. Look at my smiley face, and you see the smiley face has this white all around it? That is because it is a JPEG image. JPEGs do not support transparency, but a PNG and a GIF file both do support transparency. So what I've done is I used Photoshop to get rid of this white background here, and I created a PNG. Now this is the exact same graphic. The only difference is this one's a JPEG with no transparency. This is a PNG with transparency. So I'm going to change my URL to PNG for the source of the image. And now when I come over here and refresh, now I don't have a background around it. Alright, so I have Photoshop, but there are other programs you can use. There's one called Paint.net. There is a program called the GIMP. Adobe actually has their Photoshop Online, which is free for students. There are all sorts of programs that you can use to edit graphics. I will put a couple of links to different programs on Blackboard so you can download those programs. If you have a Mac or Linux, they already have programs built into them to be able to do this. But if you already have Photoshop, feel free to use it also. I can also use graphics in the background of my page. So what I want to do is come up here to the body CSS element, and I'm going to add a background, if I spell it right, dash image. Okay, and once again, this is a URL to an image. So where is the image? Alright, so I have a graphic here which is a gradient called linearleftright.png, and I want to tell it to use this. Now it is under the images folder, so I have to tell images / and then the name of the graphic. Okay, and when I do this, what I will end up with is something that looks like this. But what I want you to see is it is actually only this wide, and what the browser will do is the browser will repeat that graphic. It actually puts it in a grid shape. Okay, so I want to set my browser so that it doesn't do that. There are a couple of ways to play with it. One is I can do something like my background repeat would allow me to do it. I could create a graphic that is wide enough that it won't actually repeat. But the proper way to actually do it is going to be to use the background repeat CSS element. So I'm going to say background dash repeat. And I have a couple of options on how I repeat. Now they all start with repeat. And the one that says repeat is the default. That will repeat left and right and up and down. The repeat X will repeat the graphic left and right. That's like your X and Y coordinates in a graph in algebra class. And the repeat Y will repeat up and down. So I want to only repeat this graphic up and down. So I'm going to select repeat Y. And now what will happen when I refresh my page, you will see that the graphic goes all the way across and then it does not repeat over here. Alright, now this little white line is because I apparently did really leave a 1 pixel worth of white on the side of my graphic. If I were to fix the graphic, that would go away. Alright, so I want to show you this in another graphic instead, one that will make it a little bit easier to see. So I created this one called border-left.png. Put this back. Okay, so I'm going to pull in the border-left.png, and I'm going to let this thing repeat all across. Okay, so this is what it would look like if it repeated on the X and Y coordinates. If I did something like repeat-X, this will repeat left to right. Okay, now this graphic, because I included a gradient here, this one won't look right. But if I didn't have the gradient, it might look okay. But I actually designed this graphic to go down the side of the page. So something like this. Okay, and I don't want this to be a green background. I want it to be a white background. And there we go. So this is how I actually designed this graphic, was for it to go down the side of the page to allow me to have a little bit of a border. Okay, so I want to do some other things to the page. I don't like how my text and my graphics go over top of this graphic here. Now this graphic is 100 pixels wide, and if you notice, everything that's here has a little bit of a margin. So from the B to the left side of the page, there is a margin here to keep them from touching the side. Well, I want to expand that margin just a little bit. Now this is part of the body, and what I want to do is I want to play with the margin-left CSS element. And what I'm doing is I want to increase or decrease the margin. So if I want to increase it by 50 pixels, actually if I want to make it 50 pixels, then I put the exact size in. And then it'll shove it across a little bit. Okay, so if I do something like 75 pixels, now it'll make it a little bit wider. I can also do things like negatives. So let's say negative 20 pixels, and watch what happens here. It goes off the left side of the page. Okay, so I don't want to do that. I want this to be 75 pixels, so that way it looks nice. So now I have my border down the side, I have my basics of images, I have my links back to the home page, my graphic, which is a link to Google, and then I have my bullet items down here. I want to show you with this graphic one more thing. If I were to misspell the name for the URL to get to this thing, let's say I just called it smile, notice what happens. We have a placeholder that says image of a smiley face. That is my alt tag. So the reason for the alt tag is to put text there in place of the graphic if the graphic is missing or if somebody's using a screen reader. Now, one other thing that you want to do is you always want to specify the height and the width for a graphic, because when a page is loading, it will create a 50 by 50 pixel placeholder for each graphic that's on the page, and as the pictures load, it starts moving stuff around to make the pictures fit, and it makes it look bad because the page is shuffling all around. Whereas if I specify the width and height to begin with, then it will just stay like that. The last thing that I want to play with my site is what's called a fave icon. And the fave icon is the little graphic that appears up here on the tab, and also would appear as the graphic when I save it as a bookmark or as a favorite. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create a graphic that will be up there, and the easiest way to do it is to use an online service such as favicon.cc. There are a bunch of other ones out there, but in this case, this one works really well. It's free, and you have a couple of ways you can do it. You can actually draw your own favicon, and as you're drawing it down below here, it will show a live preview to you. Or the other option is to import an image. So I'm going to import my smiley face. And when I import it, it gives me two options. One is to keep the dimensions or to shrink it to a square. Now, keep dimensions is going to be if I have a graphic that has is more rectangular in shape. Whenever we create a favicon is always going to be a square image. So if I keep the dimensions, it will not distort my graphic. However, with my smiley face, I do want it to be more square, so I'm going to do shrink to square. And then I need to select the file that I want to upload. So I'm going to use my PNG, therefore I have my my transparency, and then I upload it. And when I upload it to their site, what it actually will do is it will create a version of it here that has all of the same pixels in it. Now, this looks bad to me looking at it, but if I scroll down and look at the preview, it looks kind of like the smile. And if you notice these right here, they have the little lines in them. These are still transparent because I uploaded the PNG file. Okay, so I like this, so I'm going to download it. And now I have it downloaded. Okay, so my web page, I want to set my my favicon. Now the thing is because I have downloaded this and I'm making these web pages on my computer, I won't see them until I use the FTP to upload it to an actual web page. Internet Explorer will not look at them until they're uploaded somewhere. Alright, so to make my favicon, what I'm going to use is a link, just like we did with CSS last week. So I'm going to say link, and its relationship is that it is an icon. The hypertext reference to it is going to be images / favicon.ico is the name of the file. And then the type is going to be image / x-icon. There are a couple of other types out there you can use, such as PNG. This is the most common one. Now, like I said, though, when I refresh over here, I will not see it appear until I upload it to the website. So your assignment this week is going to be to reproduce a site similar to this. You have a couple of other instructions in Blackboard. Make sure you look at the instructions. Make sure you hit all the bullet points. One thing I want you to be aware of is starting this week, you will now be graded not only on completing the exercises, but how well you do on creating the web page. Now what this means is that everything is due Sunday night, and if you turn it into me early in the week and let me know that it's submitted, then I can go and check it. I can give you instructions. I can give you updates on it, let you know, hey, this needs fixed. And then you have until Sunday night to make all of your corrections. If you start early in the week, you have extra time to actually get those corrections done. If you wait until Sunday night, you will not have the opportunity to make corrections to it. Please start early. Let me know when you're ready for me to grade it. I will grade it, and then you can make changes to it. Have a great week. If you have any questions, please let me know.